Those who were present near the Dodgers facility that evening described the same thing independently of each other. A red face. Fast footsteps. A silence from the people around him that was louder than anything anyone said out loud. And Shohei Ohtani, the most composed, the most disciplined, the most famously unreadable player in professional baseball, walking out of that stadium in a state that nobody who knows him had ever seen before. Something had happened. Not on the field. Not in a game. Not in a press conference or a contract negotiation or a moment of competitive heat. Something had happened inside the family. And the person whose words had caused it, the person whose single sentence had cut through every layer of professional calm that Ohtani has spent his entire career building, was not an opponent. Was not a coach. Was not a critic or an analyst or a reporter pushing too hard with a difficult question. It was his brother-in-law. 4 words. Simple. Direct. Delivered with the confidence of someone who believed, completely, that he had the right to say them. Remove the staff. Put in family. And with those words, everything that had been quietly building beneath the surface of Ohtani's most difficult professional stretch, the slump, the silence, the questions that nobody around him had been willing to ask out loud, came rushing to the surface all at once. While Ohtani stormed out with a red face, Mamiko stood in the middle of it all. And broke down in tears. To understand why those 4 words landed the way they did, you have to understand where Ohtani was, not physically, but mentally and professionally, in the period leading up to that moment. The slump had been building quietly. In the way that slumps always build for elite players, not dramatically, not suddenly, but gradually, almost invisibly, until one day the numbers are undeniable and the questions can no longer be deflected with a smile and a short answer through an interpreter. Ohtani's standards are not normal standards. His baseline for what constitutes acceptable performance is set so far above what any other player in the game considers acceptable that his version of a slump would represent a career year for the vast majority of professional athletes. That is the reality of playing at his level. The expectation never comes down. It only increases. And when performance dips, even slightly, even temporarily, the space around a player like Ohtani does not stay quiet. It fills. With opinions. With analysis. With voices, both public and private, all offering their explanation for what is happening and their prescription for how to fix it. Most of those voices, Ohtani has learned to filter. He has had years of practice at it. The media voices, the fan voices, the analyst voices, these come with the territory of being who he is, and he handles them with the kind of disciplined indifference that is itself a form of elite performance. But some voices cannot be filtered. Some voices arrive not from the outside, but from inside the circle that is supposed to be safe. And when those voices start offering opinions about how his professional life should be managed, about who should be around him, about who should have access to him, about who should be making decisions, the situation becomes something fundamentally different. That is what happened. The brother-in-law's comment did not come from nowhere. Those close to the situation describe a period of increasing tension around Ohtani's inner circle, a tension that had been building quietly for weeks before it finally surfaced in the conversation that changed everything. The nature of that tension, at its core, was a question that families of elite athletes have wrestled with across every sport and every generation. Where does family end and professional management begin? It is not a simple question. For players operating at Ohtani's level, the professional infrastructure around them, the agents, the handlers, the translators, the performance staff, the nutritionists, the media coordinators, is not a luxury. It is a necessity. These are not people filling roles that family members could simply step into without consequence. But family does not always see it that way. Family sees proximity. Family sees access. Family sees a structure of people surrounding someone they love, and sometimes, particularly during a difficult stretch, when the results on the field are not what they should be, family begins to ask whether that structure is actually serving the person at the center of it. The brother-in-law's comment was an expression of that question. But it was not delivered as a question. It was delivered as a conclusion. Remove the staff. Put in family. The certainty of it. The simplicity of it. The implication that the professional team surrounding Ohtani, people he has built relationships with, people he trusts with the details of his preparation and his performance, could be replaced by family members without any loss, without any disruption, without any consequence to the thing that Ohtani has spent his entire life building. That is what made it land the way it did. Mamiko Tanaka has never sought the spotlight. Since becoming Ohtani's wife, she has carried herself with a quietness and a grace that mirrors, in many ways, the public composure her husband is famous for. She does not give interviews. She does not seek attention. She has built her life alongside one of the most famous athletes on the planet while remaining, by deliberate choice, almost entirely outside the public narrative surrounding him. But private composure is not the same as the absence of emotion. And the position that Mamiko found herself in when her brother's words collided with her husband's reaction was one of the most painful positions a person can occupy. She was in the middle. On one side, her brother, family, blood, someone whose care for her and for Ohtani is genuine, even if the expression of that care in this moment was deeply misaligned with what the situation required. On the other side, her husband, a man she knows more completely than almost anyone, a man whose dedication to his craft and to the people he trusts professionally is not separate from who he is as a person, but is fundamental to it. When Ohtani's face reddened and he moved toward the exit, Mamiko did not follow immediately. She stayed in that space, in that conversation, holding the weight of both sides simultaneously, and it was in that moment, according to those present, that the tears came. Not tears of anger. Not tears of frustration. But the tears of a woman who loves her husband and her brother equally, who understood immediately the damage that had been done, and who knew that the work of repairing it would fall, at least in part, on her. There is no script for that moment. There is no preparation that makes it easier. It simply arrives, and you either hold it or you don't. Mamiko held it. But not without cost. Here is the truth that the brother-in-law's comment, however misguided its delivery, was actually pointing toward. Slumps do not exist in isolation. They are not purely mechanical failures of technique or timing, though those elements are always part of the analysis. They are also, particularly for players whose performance is so deeply connected to their mental and emotional state, reflections of what is happening in the spaces outside the white lines. Ohtani has always been exceptional at compartmentalization. His ability to carry personal pressure without allowing it to affect his performance is one of the least discussed but most important elements of his greatness. The dietary discipline, the preparation routines, the methodical approach to every aspect of his day, all of these are not just physical protocols. They are psychological ones. They are the systems that allow him to walk to the plate carrying the weight of expectation without that weight showing up in his swing. But systems built for normal pressure are still systems. And when the pressure being applied is not external but internal, when it comes from inside the family, from inside the circle that those systems are partly designed to protect, the compartmentalization becomes harder. The slump, in this context, is not just a slump. It is a signal. A signal that something in the environment around Ohtani had shifted in a way that his usual methods of management were not fully absorbing. The brother-in-law, in his blunt and ultimately damaging way, was responding to that signal. He saw someone he cared about struggling, and he reached for the most instinctive solution available to him: bring in family, remove the professionals, return to something simpler and more personal. The instinct was not wrong. The execution was a catastrophe. What happens inside Ohtani's personal life is, by every reasonable standard, his own business. He has protected that boundary carefully and consistently throughout his career, and he is entitled to it completely. But the reason this moment matters beyond the family is that it arrived at a specific professional crossroads, during a slump that the baseball world was already watching closely, already analyzing, already building narratives around. The Dodgers organization is built, in significant part, around Ohtani's performance and around his continued well-being, physical, mental, and emotional. The infrastructure that surrounds him at the professional level is not accidental. It has been constructed carefully, with significant investment, to give him the best possible environment to perform at the highest possible level. When a voice from inside his personal circle begins arguing that this infrastructure should be dismantled and replaced with family members, the ripple effect does not stay contained to a single conversation in a locker room corridor. It raises questions about stability, about the environment around the league's most valuable player, about whether the support systems that have been carefully constructed are actually as secure as everyone assumed. These questions do not need to be answered publicly to have weight. Their existence alone, in the minds of coaches, front office staff, and the people responsible for the Dodgers' performance, adds a layer of complexity to an already difficult stretch. Ohtani has been here before. Not in this exact configuration, not with these specific people, not with these specific words. But in the space where personal difficulty meets professional demand, where the two worlds he works so hard to keep separate suddenly and unavoidably intersect. He has always found his way through it. Not by ignoring what happened. Not by pretending the difficulty does not exist. But by returning, eventually and deliberately, to the things he can control, the preparation, the routine, the discipline that has been the foundation of everything he has built since he was a teenager eating extra rice balls and reading nutritional textbooks in Hanamaki. The relationship between Ohtani and Mamiko is, by all accounts, built on a depth of mutual understanding that goes far beyond what either of them has ever discussed publicly. She knows who he is at the professional level because she chose to build her life with someone operating at that level. He knows the position she was placed in by her brother's words, and he knows it was not a position she chose. These things take time. Repair inside a family, real repair, not just the surface-level return to normal that people sometimes mistake for resolution, requires honesty and patience and a willingness to have conversations that are more difficult than anything that happens between the white lines. The brother-in-law's words came from care. That matters. It does not excuse the damage they caused. But it matters, because care, even misapplied, even badly timed, even delivered in the most counterproductive way imaginable, is still the foundation that makes repair possible. Shohei Ohtani will take the field again. The slump will end, because they always end for players with his foundation, his discipline, his refusal to let external noise rewrite his internal standard. The numbers will return. The performances will come back. And the baseball world, which has a short memory for difficulty and a long memory for excellence, will move on. But those who were present near that stadium on the evening Ohtani walked out with a red face and Mamiko stood in the middle and broke down in tears, they will remember something that the final box score will never capture. They will remember that behind every exceptional performance is a person. A complete person, with a family and a history and a set of relationships that carry their own weight entirely separate from anything that happens between the white lines. The brother-in-law's words were wrong in their prescription. But they were right about one thing, without knowing it. Family matters to Ohtani. It always has. It is not separate from his greatness. It is part of the reason for it. The question is not whether family belongs in his world. Of course they do. The question is understanding the difference between belonging in someone's world, and trying to run it. That is a lesson that extends far beyond baseball. And it is one that, in that corridor, on that evening, everyone involved learned in the hardest possible way.